What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. So, now that the national championship game is over and all of bowl season is finally wrapped up, it is time to talk about the biggest winners and losers of this year's bowl season. This video is going to be focusing in on the losers. And just for clarification, these are in no particular order or ranking. They are just the overall losers. I'm not really trying to compare or rank loser versus loser. That's not what I'm doing. Just trying to talk about who are the biggest losers in no particular order. With that being said, though, let's go ahead and get into who I think these biggest losers are. So for me, the first one on the list has to be North Carolina. This entire season can be considered a loss for North Carolina. They severely underperformed expectations this year, and that carried over into bowl season for them. They lost in a pretty dominant and embarrassing fashion to South Carolina, who is a roster with far less talent than them overall, a much less experienced coaching staff, and a team that was on their fourth starting quarterback of the season. Meanwhile, North Carolina has a legendary head coach. They've stacked together multiple elite recruiting classes on top of each other. And they have a quarterback who's a preseason Heisman frontrunner and a future first-round pick in all likelihood. And yet they end with a losing record on the season. They look like clearly the inferior team on the field the entire game. And so far, this game hasn't seemed to affect their recruiting, very much, if at all. But there hasn't really been time for it to yet. And I have noticed that the sort of feel around the program as a whole is just kind of down after this whole season, and then the way that it ended out. It's not where you would want the program to be, not where you would expect them to be coming into this season. And they're having some staff turnover, some staff changes, picking up Gene Chizik as the defensive coordinator. Hopefully that's going to improve the team going forward, but in my opinion, the future of this team is in question with an aging Mac Brown and seemingly diminished returns on some of their recruiting success. I definitely see a path where North Carolina begins to fall off the map going forward if they don't start to turn things around after this past season. Now, this season could just be an outlier, though, and they may end up going on to do great things with the conference and in college football as a whole. You never know. But this loss in particular, to me, caps off a year that raises a lot of questions around the entire program, in my opinion, and the future of it going forward. The next big loser is Mississippi State. This was a team that was stupidly difficult to read and predict this season. They would go out and beat a highly ranked team like a Texas A&M, and then they would also go out and lose games they're supposed to win easily, and lose them by a lot too. This game was an example of one of those losing efforts. It was not at all the way they needed to end the season either. They got absolutely blown out in a game which they were favored in, and the game was never even remotely close. Mike Leach has done a pretty average job so far, and with the other teams in the conference and the division on the rise like Arkansas and Texas A&M, even within their own state, you see a program like Ole Miss. Things aren't looking great for the future of Mississippi State unless they can start to get some more consistency going forward. I mean, this is a team that could definitely utilize the transfer portal to their advantage going forward. They've struggled to consistently out-recruit other teams in the SEC, and that's not to say they're recruiting poorly. They're recruiting well nationally, but that still puts them towards the bottom of the SEC in recruiting, and that's who you play every year. So they have a talent disadvantage, and, Mike Leach, he's got to get stuff going in the right direction there. They're doing decent. It's not like it's all doom and gloom for Mississippi State, but they definitely are starting to struggle, and it doesn't look like anybody in the SEC is going to be slowing down anytime soon. And that's got to be somewhat frightening if you're a Mississippi State fan. I'm confident in saying that Mike Leach will probably be staying around for a while, despite some of the on-field results not quite being anything great. Mississippi State has more realistic expectations than a lot of SEC fan bases do, and hopefully over time he'll be able to raise the program's level of play going forward. But for now, they're kind of just a struggling team in the SEC West, and the blowout bowl loss certainly does not help that at all. My next big loser is Oregon. I almost didn't put Oregon on this list at all, but after I thought about it, I kind of had to. They lost to Oklahoma in a game that really wasn't close. They lost their head coach to Miami, which was pretty unexpected for them. And losing Cristobal really hurts them in recruiting. It'll lead to some roster turnover for sure. They've already had some roster turnover. Some guys hit the portal, a lot of decommits. And the loss to Oklahoma, to me, the team just kind of looked flat and deflated. And that's something that Dan Lanning will have working against him when he gets to Oregon. Now, he's coming off of a national championship win over with Georgia, so he's more than qualified and I think he's going to bring a lot of enthusiasm there. But it's sort of the opposite situation that Brent Venables is going to be put in when he gets to Oklahoma. They're going to have all the momentum, a lot of positivity, a lot of energy around the program after a big win like that after Bob Stoops, despite the Lincoln Riley, departure. But at Oregon, they're not going to have that. They're going to be lacking a lot of that after the coaching change there. I think that's going to put Dan Lanning, it's going to put more work in front of Dan Lanning. It's going to put him a little bit against the wall early on. The reason I almost didn't put him on the list is just because I think once Dan gets there, this bowl game is going to kind of become a distant memory, and that he's going to rejuvenate and invigorate the program going forward with a lot of positive energy, build some momentum through the offseason. I mean, his players absolutely love him. We know he recruits with the best of them, and man, can he coach a defense. So while it may take a year or two to completely return Oregon back to where they were and then beyond that going forward, I don't think this bowl game is what's going to have much of a lasting impact on the program going forward. But just sort of based on how flat Oregon looked in this game and the fact that another program of about their stature in Oklahoma, who's in a similar situation, is going the exact opposite direction, I kind of had to put them on the list, especially with the loss to Mario Cristobal. So yeah, they end up on the list at the end of the day, but to me, they're not really that big of a loser compared to some of the other ones on this list. And so my next and I think final loser on the list is Michigan. And Michigan is only a loser from bowl season, okay? Don't get me wrong. They're not a regular season loser by any means. They're a somewhat unique case of a team who is a big winner. I mean, a big winner for the season as a whole. I mean, they won the Big Ten. They beat Ohio State. They made the playoff. But they are a loser when it comes to just specifically talking about the bowl season. I mean, they had a lot of hype and momentum built around the team heading into this, heading into the playoff, heading into the Orange Bowl against Georgia. And there was a very real chance that it seemed like Michigan could reach a national title, and they could, really capitalize off their opportunity that they were given in Miami, and build program momentum going forward and restore Michigan to, their former glory and all. And none of it manifested. It was just nowhere to be found. It would be one thing, too, if Michigan lost like a close competitive game that showed that they were really close but just not quite there. If that happened, then I wouldn't put them on the loser list, because at that point, it's still a great playoff experience, and they just weren't quite there. They're just a little bit short. But that's not what happened here. They weren't close at all. I mean, they got blown out and dominated for the entirety of the game. And Georgia, they took what Michigan likes to do, which is, be physical, control the lines of scrimmage, and they completely beat Michigan at what Michigan does. The impact of that loss on the team may be felt in the future in both a good way and a bad way. I mean, either the players from this team are going to learn from the loss, strive to do even better in the future, and just take it as a learning experience and raise their game even further going forward. Or, you could see it sort of get into their heads, and this might be the highest point that this team really achieves because of it. Sort of like when the Seattle Seahawks threw the interception in the end zone in the Super Bowl, and then you never saw them get back after how great they had been all that time. It could be a situation like that for Michigan. I don't think that that's going to be it, but that is a very real possibility. And then you couple that loss with now all of the rumors swirling about Harbaugh going back to the NFL and what the future around Michigan is. It just becomes much more uncertain at Michigan. And if Harbaugh leaves at this point, you're really kind of stuck in a really bad situation where who do you go to get as a head coach? There's been so much coaching turnover at this point. Most all of your big candidates are kind of gone. You could promote from within with Gaddis. I don't know. Harbaugh may not leave. He may stay and continue to build this program, build on their momentum going forward, and they could win the Big Ten again next year and be right back in the playoff. But there's so much uncertainty around a Michigan team that going into the playoffs you would not have expected to see or hear about. They seem like they were on the road to greener pastures, and then all of a sudden now they're in a huge land of uncertainty that could go either way for them, and it's got to be frightening for a lot of the Michigan faithful. If Harbaugh does stay, I think Michigan will likely be able to build off their success. They could improve in the future, and beat Ohio State, win the Big Ten. That could be, more and more common for them. Not going to say it's going to happen every year by any means, but, it could be much more common going forward. But if they lose Harbaugh, in addition to losing the playoff game, like I said, things get a lot more uncertain. You don't know who your coach is going to be. You're getting a very late hire What does that do to your roster with the portal and you know, your recruiting class going forward? Huge amounts of unknown there, and that's why I've got to put Michigan as one of the biggest losers on this list. Anyway, though, that'll do it for this video. This is sort of a shorter one, especially much shorter than the winners. I hate doing loser-type videos like this because it seems like you're ragging on people really hard, and most teams don't deserve it. I mean, there's only a few teams that are really losers out of the postseason, out of bowl season. These are all teams who did good enough to make a bowl and had good seasons in their own right. And for most of them. But, you know, there are those certain losers out there, and I feel like it's important to talk about them, teams that are really struggling after their bowl season, after their postseason, and that's the focus here. But anyway, yeah, like I said, that'll do it for this video. Those are the teams that I think are the biggest losers from the bowl season. Let me know down below what you guys think and who you guys think are the biggest losers, what you think about the ones that I did list. And also, if you've made it this far in the video, be sure to just go ahead and leave a like. It helps out the channel a lot, helps everything grow. And subscribe to the channel for more college football content like this in the future. I will be continuing to put out college football content going forward. Check out the other content on the channel. And with that being said, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.